At approximately 10:45 on the morning of June 28, 1914, an open automobile turned onto a narrow street in Sarajevo. The driver had made a mistake. A military officer inside the car immediately shouted that they were going the wrong way. The driver slowed down and began trying to reverse. For a few seconds, the vehicle carrying one of Europe's most important royal figures sat almost motionless. Standing only a short distance away was a 19-year-old named Gavrilo Princip. Earlier that morning, Princip had joined a group of young conspirators determined to kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary. Their first major attack had already failed. A bomb had exploded behind the Archduke's car, injuring people in another vehicle but leaving the intended target alive. The visit should have been cancelled. Security should have surrounded the Archduke. The streets should have been cleared. Instead, Franz Ferdinand remained in an open car. Now that car had stopped within shooting distance of Princip. He stepped forward, raised a pistol and fired twice. One bullet struck Franz Ferdinand. The other struck his wife, Sophie. Within a short time, both were dead. The shooting itself lasted only seconds. But over the following 5 weeks, Austria-Hungary would confront Serbia, Russia would begin mobilizing, Germany would declare war, France would prepare its armies, and Britain would enter the conflict after German forces invaded Belgium. By early August, much of Europe was at war. But how could the deaths of 2 people in Sarajevo lead to a conflict involving empires across the world? Did Gavrilo Princip truly start World War I? Or did his bullets merely ignite a continent that had already prepared itself to burn? To answer that, we must return to the streets of Sarajevo, before the bomb, before the wrong turn and before anyone understood that an old world was about to disappear. In the summer of 1914, Europe appeared powerful, modern and confident. Its cities were connected by railways. Telegraph cables carried messages across borders in minutes. Factories produced steel, chemicals, locomotives and weapons on a scale earlier generations could hardly have imagined. The major European empires controlled enormous territories. Britain possessed a global empire. France ruled colonies across Africa and Asia. Germany had become an industrial and military power. Russia stretched from Eastern Europe to the Pacific. Austria-Hungary governed a vast collection of peoples, languages and national identities. Yet beneath the appearance of stability, Europe was dangerously divided. Germany and Austria-Hungary were closely aligned. France had an alliance with Russia. Britain had reached understandings with France and Russia, although these arrangements did not operate like a single automatic switch that guaranteed immediate war. The problem was not simply that alliances existed. The greater danger was that political and military leaders increasingly viewed every crisis through the question of what their rivals might do next. If Austria-Hungary attacked Serbia, would Russia intervene? If Russia mobilized, would Germany wait? If Germany attacked France, would Britain remain neutral? Each government feared that hesitation might give its enemies an advantage. Military plans were built around speed. Once mobilization began, stopping it could become politically and logistically difficult. Meanwhile, the Balkans had become one of Europe's most unstable regions. The Ottoman Empire had been losing territory. New and expanding states competed for land and influence. Serbia had emerged from the Balkan Wars with greater confidence, while Austria-Hungary feared that Serbian nationalism could inspire Slavic communities inside its own borders. Bosnia and Herzegovina sat directly inside this conflict. Austria-Hungary had administered Bosnia for decades and formally annexed it in 1908. Many South Slav nationalists bitterly opposed Habsburg rule. Some dreamed of uniting Bosnia with Serbia or creating a larger South Slav state. So when Franz Ferdinand prepared to visit Sarajevo in June 1914, he was not entering an ordinary provincial capital. He was entering a city filled with political tension, imperial authority, and revolutionary anger. The date made the visit even more sensitive. June 28 carried deep historical and national meaning for many Serbs. Yet the Archduke's schedule moved forward. Was Europe already destined for war? No. History is rarely that simple. Governments still had choices. Diplomats still had opportunities. Even after the assassination, war was not unavoidable. But Europe had created a system in which fear, rivalry, and military planning could transform a local crisis into something far larger. Sarajevo did not construct the powder keg. It provided the spark. Gavrilo Princip was not a powerful general, wealthy politician, or experienced professional assassin. He was a young Bosnian Serb revolutionary associated with Young Bosnia, a loose movement whose members opposed Austro-Hungarian rule and supported the liberation or unification of the South Slavs. Princip and several other conspirators believed that killing Franz Ferdinand could strike a dramatic blow against the Habsburg Empire. Their plot had connections to Serbian nationalist networks, including individuals associated with the secret organization commonly known as the Black Hand. Weapons and assistance crossed from Serbia into Bosnia. However, historians distinguish between the involvement of particular Serbian military and nationalist figures and proof that the Serbian government itself officially ordered the assassination. The men chosen to carry out the attack were young, politically radical, and willing to die. They received pistols, bombs, and poison capsules. The poison was intended to prevent them from being captured and interrogated. But possessing a weapon was not the same as being prepared to use it. On the morning of June 28, conspirators positioned themselves at different points along the route the royal motorcade was expected to take through Sarajevo. This created multiple opportunities. If the first man failed, another could act farther down the road. Yet it also revealed how uncertain the plan really was. There was no sophisticated command center. No radios connected the conspirators. They could not instantly warn one another if the route changed. Each man stood largely alone, waiting for the Archduke's car to appear. Then the motorcade entered the city. Franz Ferdinand rode with Sophie in an open automobile. The route had been publicly known. Protection was limited, and the procession passed close to people gathered along the street. The first conspirator saw the car approaching. He did nothing. Perhaps the speed was wrong. Perhaps police stood too close. Perhaps, at the final moment, the reality of killing another human being overwhelmed the plan. A second conspirator also failed to act. The Archduke's car continued. Imagine Princip waiting farther along the route. He could not see what had happened behind him. He did not know whether the others had lost their nerve or whether the target was still approaching. Then another member of the group, Nedeljko Kabrinovic, saw the royal automobile coming toward him. This time, someone acted. Kabrinovic stepped toward the road and threw a bomb at the Archduke's car. The device struck or bounced away from the vehicle before exploding beneath or near the automobile behind it. The blast injured members of the procession and people nearby, but Franz Ferdinand and Sophie were not seriously harmed. The motorcade accelerated away. Kabrinovic attempted to kill himself. He swallowed his poison capsule and jumped into the shallow Miljacka River. But the poison did not work as intended, and the river was too shallow to carry him away. Police and bystanders captured him. The assassination appeared to have failed. Yet the decisions made immediately afterward are difficult to understand from a modern perspective. The motorcade continued to Sarajevo's city hall. When Franz Ferdinand arrived, he was furious. A ceremonial welcome was waiting, as though nothing had happened. The mayor began delivering a prepared speech while the Archduke interrupted to protest that he had arrived in Sarajevo only to have a bomb thrown at him. Eventually, the formal ceremony continued. This moment matters because everyone now knew an assassination plot existed. A bomb had been thrown in public. Several conspirators might still be somewhere in the city. The Archduke was traveling in an open vehicle with limited protection. Why was the visit not ended immediately? Part of the answer lies in pride and protocol. Franz Ferdinand did not want to appear frightened. Officials also faced confusion about what to do next. Information was incomplete, and security arrangements were being improvised under pressure. The Archduke then decided to visit those wounded in the bombing. It was a humane decision, but an extraordinarily dangerous one. The motorcade's route was supposed to change. Instead of following the original path through central Sarajevo, the cars would continue along the Appelquay toward the hospital, avoiding narrower streets. But not everyone received the new instructions clearly. This is where the story begins to feel almost impossible. The assassins had failed. The bomb had missed. The intended victim had survived. The authorities knew he was in danger. And yet, less than 2 hours later, the Archduke would be delivered almost directly to another conspirator. What was Gavrilo Princip doing after the bombing? Popular retellings often claim he had given up and gone to buy a sandwich. It is a memorable detail, but reliable evidence for it is lacking. The truth is less humorous and more unsettling. Princip remained in central Sarajevo after the first attack failed. He knew Kabrinović's bomb had exploded, but he also learned that Franz Ferdinand was still alive. The royal procession had reached City Hall, and the conspirators' opportunity seemed to be disappearing. Princip was now close to a food shop near the corner of Franz Joseph Street and the Appelquay. Meanwhile, Franz Ferdinand and Sophie left City Hall and returned to their automobile. The driver followed the original route and turned onto Franz Joseph Street. Governor Oskar Podorek immediately realized the mistake and ordered him to stop. The driver slowed and attempted to reverse. That was when Princip saw the car. Think about everything that had to happen for this moment to exist. The first conspirators had to hesitate. The bomb had to miss its target. Franz Ferdinand had to continue the visit. He had to decide to go to the hospital. The route had to be changed. The driver had to miss or misunderstand that change. The car then had to slow down near the exact place where Princip was standing. Historians sometimes summarize this as the wrong turn that started World War I. But a wrong turn alone did not cause the war. It only created the final opportunity in a much larger chain of human decisions. Princip moved toward the vehicle. There was no long chase. No dramatic exchange of words. No final warning. He drew a semi-automatic pistol and fired from close range. One bullet struck Sophie. Another struck Franz Ferdinand. The Archduke reportedly tried to reassure his wife even as both were collapsing. The car raced toward medical assistance, but nothing could save them. Sophie died first. Franz Ferdinand died shortly afterward. Princip was seized before he could escape or kill himself. At that moment, no one standing on the street could know what the shooting would eventually mean. It was a political murder. It was an imperial crisis. It was a tragedy for two families. But it was not yet a world war. After the shooting, Princip was beaten, arrested and interrogated. To some South Slav nationalists, he would later be remembered as a fighter against imperial rule. To others, he was a terrorist whose actions helped unleash catastrophe. These opposing images reveal why the assassination remains politically sensitive. Princip believed that Bosnia should be freed from Austria-Hungary and joined with a broader South Slav political project. He did not shoot Franz Ferdinand because he wanted a world war involving Britain, France, Germany and Russia. There is no evidence that he understood the full international chain reaction his act would help trigger. He was trying to strike an empire. Instead, he gave that empire a crisis it could use against Serbia. Because Princip had not yet reached the age required for execution under Austro-Hungarian law, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison rather than death. His health deteriorated severely during captivity, and he died of tuberculosis in 1918, only months before the war ended. He did not live to see Austria-Hungary collapse. He did not live to see a South Slav kingdom established after the war. And he did not live to witness the full human cost associated with the conflict his assassination helped ignite. But should one 19-year-old carry responsibility for all of World War I? That explanation is emotionally satisfying because it gives history a single villain and a single moment. One man raises a pistol, fires twice, and destroys the peace of Europe. The reality is more uncomfortable. Princip killed Franz Ferdinand and Sophie. He was responsible for those deaths. But he did not write Austria-Hungary's ultimatum to Serbia. He did not give Germany's promise of support. He did not order Russian mobilization. He did not declare war on France or invade Belgium. Those decisions were made by rulers, ministers, diplomats, and generals. The assassination created the crisis. Europe's leaders decided what to do with it. In the hours after the assassination, Europe did not immediately collapse into war. For several days, life continued with a disturbing degree of normality. Newspapers reported the murders, royal courts expressed grief, and investigators searched for the conspiracy behind the attack. Then Austria-Hungary began deciding how to respond. Its leaders viewed Serbia not merely as a neighboring country but as a threat to the empire's survival. Serbian nationalism appeared capable of encouraging unrest among the South Slavs living under Habsburg rule. Some Austro-Hungarian leaders believed the assassination offered an opportunity to weaken Serbia decisively. But attacking Serbia carried a major risk. Russia saw itself as a protector of Serbia and other Slavic peoples in the Balkans. If Russia intervened, Austria-Hungary would need German support. In early July, Germany gave Vienna what became known as the blank check. A strong assurance that it would support Austria-Hungary, even if action against Serbia led to conflict with Russia. Why would Germany make such a dangerous commitment? German leaders feared diplomatic isolation, believed Austria-Hungary had to remain a credible ally, and worried that Russia's military strength was increasing. Some thought a confrontation might be less dangerous in 1914 than several years later. Austria-Hungary did not strike immediately. Instead, it spent weeks preparing an ultimatum. On July 23, nearly a month after the assassination, Serbia received a list of demands. Some were acceptable. Others threatened Serbian sovereignty, including demands related to Austro-Hungarian participation in suppressing and investigating anti-Habsburg activity inside Serbia. Serbia accepted many points but did not accept every demand exactly as presented. Austria-Hungary declared the reply insufficient. On July 28, 1 month after Franz Ferdinand's death, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Artillery soon opened fire on Belgrade. The crisis had now crossed the line from diplomacy to warfare, but it was still a regional conflict. Could it have remained one? Possibly. But Russia began military preparations to support Serbia and protect its own influence in the Balkans. Russian mobilization alarmed Germany, whose war planning assumed that a major conflict with Russia would probably also involve Russia's ally France. Germany demanded that Russia stop mobilizing. Russia did not comply. On August 1, Germany declared war on Russia. 2 days later, Germany declared war on France. To avoid the heavily fortified French-German border, German strategy called for forces to move through neutral Belgium and attack France from the north. Germany invaded Belgium on August 4. Britain, which had strategic interests in preventing German domination of Western Europe and obligations connected to Belgian neutrality, declared war on Germany. In less than 6 weeks, The murder of an Austrian archduke in Bosnia had become a European war. Soon, imperial possessions and armies would carry the conflict far beyond Europe. There was no single mechanical alliance chain forcing each government to act. At every stage, leaders evaluated risks and made choices. But every choice narrowed the path to peace. By August 1914, millions of soldiers were moving toward the front. Many expected the war to be short. Instead, industrialized warfare produced trenches, artillery bombardments, machine gun fire, poison gas, hunger, disease and destruction on a scale Europe had never experienced. Empires collapsed. Borders changed. Revolutions transformed governments. The political consequences of the conflict continued long after the shooting stopped. So did Princip's 2 bullets truly start all of this? The most accurate answer is both yes and no. Yes, because without the Sarajevo assassination, the specific July crisis of 1914 would not have unfolded in the same way. Franz Ferdinand's death gave Austria-Hungary the reason and political opportunity to confront Serbia. That confrontation activated the fears and military calculations of Europe's other powers. But no, because the assassination alone could not create a world war. Political leaders might have chosen a limited investigation, international mediation, or a less extreme ultimatum. Russia might have restricted its military preparations. Germany might have pressured Austria-Hungary to compromise rather than promising unconditional support. European governments might have continued negotiations before mobilization made retreat more difficult. None of those alternatives was guaranteed to work. But they existed. That is what makes the story so important. World War I was not caused by a mysterious force that took control of Europe. It emerged from a chain of decisions made by people who often believed they were defending their nations, protecting their alliances, or acting before their enemies could act first. Each decision appeared rational to someone. Together, they became catastrophic. The assassination was the spark. Nationalism, imperial rivalry, military planning and fear were the fuel. And Europe's leaders repeatedly chose not to remove that fuel before the fire reached it. Return to Sarajevo. The automobile is stopped near the sidewalk. The driver is trying to reverse. A young man sees the target he believed he had lost. For Princip, the opportunity lasts only seconds. He steps forward. He raises the pistol. He fires. At that exact moment, there are no trenches stretching across France. No devastated cities. No millions of grieving families. No fallen empires. No map of Europe redrawn by war. There are only 2 wounded people inside a car, a terrified crowd and a 19-year-old being dragged away by police. The World War exists only as a possibility. That may be the most haunting part of the story. The future was not contained inside Princip's pistol. His weapon could kill Franz Ferdinand and Sophie, but it could not command armies or sign declarations of war. Those actions came afterward. For 37 days, Europe's governments still possessed opportunities to step back. Instead, suspicion answered suspicion. Mobilization answered mobilization. Threat answered threat. By the time leaders understood how far the crisis had traveled, many believed retreat was more dangerous than war. 2 bullets did not force Europe to destroy itself. They created the moment when Europe revealed how ready it was to do so. And that is why the shots fired in Sarajevo still echo through history. Not because one young assassin controlled the world, but because an entire continent allowed his crime to become its catastrophe.